All right, folks. If you've put your trust in the scriptures, you're in for something truly intriguing next. I think it's fair to assume many of us here cherish the Bible, right? Well, NBC News just dropped quite the headline. Listen to this. They've unveiled a study indicating the potential existence of what they're terming alien megastructures, also known as Dyson Spheres. Now, for those of us steeped in scripture, this might echo narratives from the book of Ezekiel or the book of Revelation. I'm about to play a clip for you all. Watch closely as they delve into these so-called Dyson Spheres, and let me know if any of it sounds strikingly familiar.
A group of researchers say they've identified at least 7 stars that might be surrounded by super advanced alien megastructures known as Dyson Spheres. Yes, I said alien structures, and I know what you're thinking, but just stay with me here, because the basic idea was this. Superior intelligent life might build big structures around their home stars or planets as a way to harness or reuse that energy. A 1960s physicist who came up with this idea, Freeman Dyson, argued that if these structures existed, there'd be so much energy that human scientists on Earth could probably spot it because it would emit a lot of infrared radiation. So in this new study, researchers say they found 7 sources glowing in the infrared, those are their words, but couldn't find an obvious explanation for why these sources are glowing so much, which could mean they're Dyson Spheres or something else entirely.
They came across 7 sources emitting in the infrared spectrum, but the reason behind it remains unclear. Not 1, not 2, not 6, or not 8, but exactly 7. Such a specific number sparks curiosity. Some might even link it to the book of Revelation, which we'll delve into shortly.
And what I'm saying is, what? Space is so crazy. I wish I understood it better. So let's talk to a scientist to help wrap our heads around this. I'm joined now by Professor Janna Levan. She is an astrophysicist and author of the book Black Hole Survival Guide, as well as the Claire Tow Professor of Physics and Astronomy at Barnard College of Columbia University. Professor, first of all, thank you so much for being here.
Thanks for having me.
I tried to explain it a little bit. That was my very dirty version. I was going to be like, yeah, but I'm an English major who just had Google. You have a PhD in physics from MIT. So how do you explain Dyson Spheres?
I think there was an excellent explanation. If you look at where we are relative to the sun, we're very far away. We're the 3rd planet in. And imagine the light that we try to collect, let's say, with solar panels on people's homes or on any roofs to collect that energy. Imagine if you got really close and you caught everything the sun was emitting. It's just a tremendous amount of power. And so Freeman Dyson was thinking about this. Actually, he was originally inspired by sci-fi. Written by Olaf Stapleton like decades earlier. And his idea wasn't so much a solid sphere. It was really like satellites in orbit, a network of things that would be orbiting and would essentially, what we would now say, have solar panels and are collecting that energy.
So what do you make of this study, just generally speaking, I guess? Do you think it's possible that these are the elusive Dyson Spheres?
So I think it's very unlikely, but I'm open. We have to be open as scientists. If we think we know the answer before we go and observe, then we're already defeated. I think it's terribly unlikely, but it's extremely exciting and interesting to think about. And it's fun to think about. What's probably going to happen is we're going to look at this infrared signature that you mentioned, and we're going to find out that there's a natural cause. So a lot of things emit heat in the infrared. You know, infrared goggles allow us to see human bodies and the heat of human bodies. And it's not that dissimilar that when we look in the infrared, we see things emitting heat. So the idea was if we had this very technologically advanced civilization, like thousands of years beyond where we are right now, and they could build such a thing and it was collecting all this energy, it would collect also some heat and would have to cool off, and we would see that in the infrared. But there are other natural possibilities that could explain.
What do you think those possibly could be?
Well, it could be a very young star that still has some material around it in kind of a disk.
This really captures my attention. It ties into a passage from the book of Ezekiel, where he describes an extraordinary vision of angels, portraying it almost like a sphere within a sphere, all encircled by eyes. We'll delve into that verse shortly. I remember a video where Tucker Carlson delves into the topics of Nephilim and extraterrestrial life. He made an interesting point about human limitations in capturing precise details. Basically, what he said was that when eyewitnesses try to describe a suspect to police, they might get the height or hair right or the basic features right, but often miss the finer points. They brought up this concept and called it a Dyson sphere, though that's their term. However, its resemblance to the biblical depictions of angels is noted. While the finer details may be blurry, the foundational elements align closely with Scripture. It's fascinating how, whenever such discoveries arise and the media struggles to define them, the default explanation seems to be aliens. Yet, they overlook the simplest reference available for centuries: the Bible. It's as if the answers to modern mysteries are already documented in ancient texts, but there's a reluctance to consult them. Instead, people turn to academics with advanced degrees in fields like astronomy and physics, expecting them to unravel these mysteries. Despite their extensive education, even they find themselves at a loss. We're truly living in intriguing times.
And that's how planets form. Planets coalesce out of these early disks, and those can emit in the infrared. It could be that there's actually an entire galaxy in the distance behind the star, and we're seeing that galaxy, and we can't disambiguate those. Or it could be planetary collisions. I mean, there are natural explanations. But I think it's worth noting, we're looking just 1,000 light years around us. That sounds far, but it's actually really close. That's our backyard. The entire Milky Way galaxy is 100,000 light years across. And there are probably more planets in the Milky Way galaxy than there are stars. So we're talking of hundreds of billions and maybe trillions of planets out there.
Did you hear it? That's our backyard. So these so-called Dyson spheres, right? They are now getting closer to even to our backyard. I'm not about to dive into deep, wild conspiracy theories or proclaim the end times or anything like that. However, you can't deny we are heading that way fast. Just take a look around. I'm not sure how you'd label it. I don't know what you'd call it. I've seen many videos mentioning that the angels are drawing near. I'm not exactly sure what to make of that because, well, God is among us as we speak. God is present. Absolutely, Jesus is returning, but God's presence is with us at this very moment. Do you get what I'm saying? But it's fascinating that she noted these phenomena might seem distant, but truly, they're right in our neighborhood. It's like they're arriving any moment now, isn't it?
And I think we're in an era where we think the emergence of life is possibly inevitable elsewhere, that we're not the only example. Now, whether or not they've survived with thousands of years of industrial advancement to build a Dyson Sphere is a different story.
Yeah. Do you think there is a scenario where a Dyson Sphere might actually exist, or do you think this is really just the stuff of sci-fi fantasy?
I think it's feasible, unlikely. If you look at where we are since the Industrial Revolution, it's only a couple hundred years, we're in a precarious position. We have climate change, we have struggles with nuclear power, nuclear weapons that are could be destructive. It's unclear that any species that makes it that advanced could survive far enough into their own future to be able to build a Dyson Sphere. But there are optimists out there who say we'll find a way.
Yeah, right. The universe is a pretty big place, right? And it'd be a shame if it was just us. Seems like a lot of waste of space. Right? All right, Professor, thank you so much for being here.
Consider the vastness of the universe. Who's more advanced than God? That's a perspective often overlooked. For instance, Revelation 1:20 states, "As for the mystery of the 7 stars that you saw in my right hand, and the 7 golden lampstands, the 7 stars are the angels of the 7 churches, and the 7 lampstands are the 7 churches." It's intriguing how specifically the number 7 is emphasized. Of all the numbers, it's always 7. Switching to Ezekiel, the visions begin strikingly in chapter 1. We read, "As I looked, behold, a stormy wind came out of the north, and a great cloud with brightness around it, and fire flashing forth continually, and in the midst of the fire, as it were, gleaming metal. And from the midst of it came the likeness of 4 living creatures. And this was their appearance. They had a human likeness, but each had 4 faces, and each of them had 4 wings." Ezekiel 1:4-6. These creatures are not just mysterious, but vivid in their description. Their legs were straight, and the soles of their feet were like the sole of a calf's foot, and they sparkled like burnished bronze. Under their wings on their 4 sides they had human hands, and the 4 had their faces and their wings thus. Their wings touched one another. Each one of them went straight forward without turning as they went. Ezekiel 1:7-9. The vision continues with remarkable detail about the movement and the divine coordination accompanying these beings. And as I looked at the living creatures, I saw a wheel on the earth beside the living creatures, one for each of the four of them. As for the appearance of the wheels and their construction, their appearance was like the gleaming of beryl. Ezekiel 1:15-16. And above all these, Ezekiel sees a divine throne. Over the heads of the living creatures there was the likeness of an expanse, shining like awe-inspiring crystal, spread out above their heads. And under the expanse their wings were stretched out straight, one toward another. And each creature had 2 wings covering its body. Ezekiel 1:22-23. The culmination of this vision is overwhelming, as described, and above the expanse over their heads there was the likeness of a throne in appearance like sapphire, and seated above the likeness of the throne was a likeness with a human appearance. Ezekiel 1:26. This divine revelation reminds us of the omnipresence of God, His intricate design, and His perfect timing in all things, as Paul reminds us in Romans 8:28. And we know that for those who love God, all things work together for good, for those who are called according to His purpose. This isn't just ancient in text. It's a reminder of the divine order and God's ongoing presence in His creation, far beyond our human understanding. God's wisdom dwarfs our earthly knowledge, emphasizing that His ways and thoughts are far above our own. Let's discuss this further. Drop your thoughts in the comments.